Let's begin with a little meditation. Sit comfortably with your spine erect in some similitude of the 7 postures of Vairocana. And place your attention in front on your breathing, on your respiration. And bring your attention to your mental consciousness. Try to let go of all conceptuality and see, perceive the nature of the mind behind the thoughts, the clear light nature of the mind. Recognizing the very presence of the thoughts implies the spaciousness of the mind. As soon as you understand that implication, try to let go of your attention to the objective thought, refocus on the inferred clarity of the mind, the spaciousness of the mind. Let go again and again. Let go of the attention to outer stimulus, outer distractions, inner distractions, especially the appearance of your body, just arising to your mental consciousness. You don't have to pay attention to that. Instead, perceive the spaciousness, clear light nature of the mind that perceives it. Within this quiet state of mind, try to recall that our life of leisure and endowment is impermanent. We definitely have to die. And envision, try to bring to the present our future death. Imagine either you're conscious and meditating, you've developed somewhat this lifetime, so you're going to die in the meditation posture, or that you're lying down. And at first the body becomes more emaciated, more the earth element, the form aggregate, dissolve. It's said dissolve into the water element as the water element becomes predominant. The eye faculty begins to absorb, so also the eye consciousness is not going to be able to make contact with the objects clearly. The mirror-like wisdom, basic wisdom absorbs. The hue of the body becomes less brilliant, color and so forth. And to your mental consciousness there appears, as you're training yourself to be less distracted by conceptual thoughts, you notice the mirage-like vision as the earth element dissolves into, it's said to dissolve into the water element. It becomes less potent and the water element seems more in ascendancy. Like the appearance in the desert of a mirage. Very subtle in your mental consciousness. Concentrate on that for some short time. Think, I'm dying. This perfect human rebirth that I had, that I spent much time misusing, engaging in meaningless activities. This is my last chance to practice. I'm going to try to practice now, at least. After some time, it might be several minutes, several hours, the water element begins to dissolve into the fire element, the feeling aggregate. Bodily feelings are less noticeable. The ear faculty absorbs so that the ear consciousness becomes unclear. Basic wisdom of equality, equanimity. Dissolves. the liquids of the body, the lubrication of the eyes and the mouth dry up, blood pressure perhaps goes down. And there's the appearance to the mind of smoke filling a space, as though some extra billowing adding to it, as the water element dissolves into the fire element. So use that simulated appearance as your object of concentration to let go of conceptual thoughts. Now think next, the fire element will dissolve. So I'm preparing myself for that. Now it begins to dissolve. The heat of the body, digestion, warmth of the body begins to diminish. Hopefully diminishing from your feet up to your heart first, before from your head to your heart, indicative that we might have the karma to have an upper rebirth. The aggregate of discrimination dissolves, mental factor discrimination. The nose faculty, and although the nose faculty itself doesn't imply the breathing, have anything to do with the breathing, it has the ability to give rise to the nose consciousness that smells fragrances and odors. The breathing becomes a little more labored. The wisdom of individual, basic wisdom of individual analysis that eventually becomes the Buddha's wisdom of individual analysis, exalted wisdom, dissolves. And to your mental consciousness there is the appearance of, as though sparks in a dark room, or fireflies at a dark night, as the fire element dissolves into the air element. I'm approaching death. The karmic conditions have arisen. These airs are absorbing irrevocably now, not as though in sleep where they will arise again this lifetime. I must try to utilize this period to practice the Dharma. Later, at other circumstances, we will learn how to meditate on emptiness with these subtle minds. Finally, the air element begins to absorb. The breathing stops, gross breathing. The aggregate of compositional factors absorbs. The wisdom of accomplishing activities, basic wisdom that becomes the Buddha's exalted wisdom of accomplishing. The tongue faculty absorbs, no longer can taste at all. The tongue becomes thick, bluish. Also, the body faculty absorbs. We no longer can experience any feelings, roughness or smoothness. Now to our mental consciousness, as we're approaching closer to death, there's the appearance of a butter lamp finishing out. Bluish glow, perhaps reddish blue glow. Now, in addition, this appearance remaining almost the same, the aggregate of consciousness absorbs. All of the sense primary consciousnesses and mental consciousness, gross consciousness absorb, along with the 80 indicative conceptions that serve to indicate that the white, red, and black appearances have varying degrees of mounting winds, slightly different strength of mounting winds. And the basic wisdom of Dharma Dhatu absorbs. Similar appearance of this flickering butter lamp. Now our body is immobile, our breathing is stopped. If we have not a massive virtuous karma, we might be very fearful at this time. Already, as the elements absorbed, we might have felt being pressed down when the earth element absorbed, carried away by water. Water element absorbed, being burned when the fire element absorbed, and so forth. Now, as the airs have receded from many of the 72,000 nadis of the body to the two side channels, the winds in the upper part, above the heart of the two side channels, enter into the Crown Chakra, and loosening that knot, they dislodge the white element at the Crown Chakra, which begins to descend, and a subtler mind of radiant white appearance occurs. Our mental consciousness, like a vast space with a slight vibration of white light, like the vibration of the moonlight in the sky. Very, very clear. No conceptual thought at this point, unless we've trained our mind in the past to utilize this. It may go unnoticed. Although you would not conceptualize at this time, think, I'm getting closer to death. This is what my death will be like. No control at this time. As the airs in the right and left nadis below the heart now enter into the secret place, secret chakra, and the jewel chakra, opening up the lower chakras. The airs enter into the central channel, loosen the navel knot, and the red element at the navel ascends, comes up to the heart chakra, and as it's going, the white appearance begins to change into a reddish, copper-like appearance. More clear, more empty. No other thoughts, naturally, no other thoughts are going to be arising, no conceptual activity. Although this mind may be a conceptual mind, no other conceptualizing thoughts after the 80 indicative delusion, the 80 indicative conceptions have absorbed. Like a space in the autumn, just when the sun has risen above the horizon, or just before that time, when the glow of the sun, the red vibration of the sun fills the sky. Not seeing the blueness behind the sky, just the sense of space pervaded by this reddish copper light. Closer to death. As these winds now come to the heart chakra, naturally loosening the sixfold knot of the right and left channels at the heart, the red and white drops that have ascended and descended absorb into the indestructible drop at the heart. All of the winds absorb into the subtle wind at the heart. And the vision changes again into the black near attainment, as though the appearance of this vast empty has become darker, like the lack of illumination. Still clear, but getting darker. Finally becoming so dark as though we lose mindfulness, as though fainting. Very, very subtle mind of near attainment, the second part. The yogis and yoginis try to keep this state as long as possible because of the contrast with the coming clear light. Now, as all of the airs have absorbed into the subtle air at the heart chakra, and the gross minds have absorbed, the otherwise unmanifest, subtlemost mind becomes manifest from that darkness, as though a vast, infinite space, totally clear, without any blemishes, clouds, pollution, like sitting on a hill after the monsoon, the dust cleared from the sky, no clouds, as though right at dawn, when there is not yet the pollution of the redness of the sun, or darkness. Clear light, as though you could see forever. For most individuals, this clear light state remains unperceived, unascertained. Even those who've trained to be able to perceive it may not be able to utilize it in the path unless have learned how to graft the meditation on emptiness to this state. Like our meditation of the grosser mind, on the clear light nature of the mind, no conceptual thought has to be fought at this time. No conceptual thoughts will be rising. No conceptuality, no thoughts of I or enlightenment or fear. This is the final death. think in order to be able to train in understanding how to utilize this clear light of death to attain enlightenment or to make very vast leaps in my understanding of emptiness, my wisdom of emptiness, for the welfare of sentient beings in future lives to become less, to be less angry, less attached, less lazy. I'm going to participate in the class tonight on the text on the three basic bodies: death, intermediate state, and rebirth, so that I can quickly attain enlightenment to benefit all mother sentient beings, lead them out of suffering into enlightenment. You can relax. Bring your attention back to the present. So I have a question for you before I ask if you have questions. Well, do anyone have questions? Okay, I have a question for you. Let me think here. What am I going to ask? I know, I'm going to ask Mark. What is the definition of death? Then I'm going to ask Somo if you don't know. Venerable Somo. She's looking terrified back there. Would you remember a scriptural one? Okay, okay, that's okay. Okay. What's your gut feeling? Do you think, like, you know, if someone said, "What's the Buddhist definition of death?" What would you say? You know, we don't like me pull something out of the hat. What would you say? Okay, so Somo. Oh, okay. Just under the wire. Okay, okay. The body losing its viability. That's the definition of death. Okay, that's good. Let's try. Somo, Venerable. Pardon me? When the white and red drops, what are they doing? Clapping? Open up. So, okay, so this is a good one. So Marx said when the body lost its viability, Venerable Soma's got a different definition, right? She's saying when the subtlemost mind leaves, that's the definition of death. Or maybe the moment of death, another way of saying. Okay. What do you think? Anyone else have a different definition? Michelle? Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think an external sign is
So that's the moment of death. That's the actual death. So those who've been in these classes a long time know that's obviously not the right answer, because I'm saying, so that's the definition of death. Huh? Okay. Frank? You want to answer?
Well, the best guess I can give you is it seems like we were before in Mario.
Right? That's a given. So your death occurs, so it's similar to what Venerable Somo was saying, right? The death occurs at the moment when the consciousness leaves this body and enters into the reverse vision, entering into the bardo. You think, April, what do you think? Do you know? Venerable? Well, that would still be fit with Venerable Someone. So Venerable, so look at this is really good. Venerable Someone's trying to find in the book. Good, that's good. That's what we used to do at Koban. After we used to have discussion every night. The Sangha. Page 18. What does it say?
It says, "This is death."
What is death? Doesn't sound like a sentence. Okay. So what is that saying? So actually, that's just the preface, but it's in. Well, no, that's the preface, but that's actually in our text itself. It says here, which page? Page 45. Three or four paragraphs. So this is called the clear light of death and the all empty, because of being devoid of the 80 conceptions and of appearance, increase in near attainment, as well as the winds that serve as mouse. It is actual death. So with that, Venerable Somo, does she win the prize? Or is it her moment of death was when the mind left the body? What do you think, David? Is this the same as what she said? How long could you remain in the clear light of death? Yeah, but a normal person who is not, his body is not totally ravaged by disease and is not disturbed, which is another factor, because nowadays, I was just with a friend the last 3 days who just passed away this morning at 5:20. I was there when he took his last breath. His pulse was going down at 2, and then he took his last breath at 5:18, 5:20, and then still there was a little motion and so forth. So if someone like that they might remain for 3 days, and a yogi or a yogini might remain possibly that long, but actually meditating or longer. So that's a long time before the mind leaves the body, right? It said that is the actual death. It's interesting. Does it say the end of the clear light? It says the actual clear light, final clear light, where there's no other changes then. The mind is still, where's the subtle mind at that time? Has it left the body? Is it in the bardo? So actually what precedes the bardo, of course, even according to Venerable Somo's definition, what preceded the bardo was death, but she was taking death to mean the last moment of that, when the consciousness leaves. But here it's saying that the death, according to Tantra, Highest Yoga Tantra, is not defined as the leaving of the consciousness, but that subtle, let's say like deep sleep. Deep sleep, what do they call it in the West? Delta sleep. In Western psychology, when the brain pattern doesn't have any other waves other than just a little blip every once in a while, a delta wave. Almost the similitude, something similar in our sleep state to this clear light. That state that's deep sleep. That's what we could eventually learn to transform in meditation, so that we can prepare ourselves for this death state. So this is this clear light of death. Maybe that's a good way of remembering it. This clear light is the death state. And it lasts for some time. The person has, why would that fit? Would it make sense? What problems would you have if you said that person is now dead?
Can't take the body away.
Say that again?
If you say they're dead, then that makes you want to take the body away. But if they're still in the clear light absorption, you can't do that.
What if we said death is a little bit similar to what you said, when all of the activities of this lifetime, all of the ordinary conscious activities and ability to cause the body to function have totally absorbed, totally disappeared. That would fit, that sense of death, right? The clear light. So it's something to think about, because I think generally a lot of Dharma students would think, if you were asked, what's the definition of death, we would say, when the mind leaves the body. So what would you say is, what takes place when the mind leaves the body? Oh, into the bardo, right? So the ending of death and the beginning of the bardo take place simultaneously. Right? Sort of like you can't differentiate one from the other. Yeah. You're not sure?
No, I'm not sure why they have the label
Here is this is not something that we're deciding, what we should do. Like the democratic, let's take a vote. That's what I remember Lama Yeshe many times in Italy, especially. I wonder if anyone will ever watch the DVDs. And Lama, when people wanted to vote, Lama selected someone to be the director, and then they said, "Oh no, we want this person." And Lama said, "Dharma is not a democracy." We think everything should be democratic. We who are beginners on the path, we should decide what the definition of death is, or something like this. This comes from the.
I'm not sure why they decided that was important.
It's not. Again, I said we didn't decide that. This is what the Buddha said. Okay. Okay. That's better. I understand. What do you think, Venerable? You can say something?
If the clear light is death, then what does that say about yogis meditating in the clear light? Okay?
According to this definition of death, they are dead, because in a sense, the way I understand it, that all the consciousness of activity of this lifetime has irrevocably ceased. There is no way that you can remember, I am Leo, or, I am David, or I am Thea. There's no way that you can move the body. There's no conception of I. So all of the connection, other than the fact that the mind is still within the heart chakra, all of the connection with the activities of this lifetime, conscious and physical, have ceased, right? So maybe in that sense, it's something. These are the kind of things I think that we have to think about. A good question. What Venerable said. Why did the Buddha say this? It's good.
But I don't mean a yogi meditating at the end of his or her lifetime, but meditating the depths and getting to the clear light absorption, so it's not really
That would not be death, then, because this. Sure, because this has taken place because of karma, such that the gross winds will never, emerge again from that subtlemost clear mind and subtlemost wind. This is due to karma, this absorption. So when one meditates, yogis and yoginis who meditate, and not first on the generation stage, they try to imagine these evolutions as we did before, and with other ways of doing it. But later in the completion stage, they engage in activities to cause the winds, by concentrating, cause the winds to absorb, but they cause the winds to absorb in such a way that they will arise again within this body, with a gross consciousness of this lifetime, with a memory of this lifetime, and so forth. So that's different than the death state. So it's not just something that we might call, like the meditator is meditating on clear light. What kind of clear light? We'll see today or the next class. What kind of clear light is that called when you meditate? Do you know, Dan? Good idea. What's it called? That's called the sun clear light. The mom clear light is the sort of like the mother lode, the mother of all clear lights. Okay, good. Okay, I like this. Well, I was going to say before, at Copan, it used to be at the end of the discussion, we'd go back to our rooms. We'd have these spirited debates, and we took the aspect of being absolutely certain, that this was the way, and then we'd go back to our rooms. What, did I get it right? Let's see. Right. Yeah. Do you see? Yeah. So the mother clear light has to do with the actual clear light of death, right? The sun clear light, or maybe we should say daughter clear light? Anyway, it says sun clear light, is the clear light that the yogi or yogini creates, not just in imagination, a clear light experience that they create due to causing, in the completion stage, the airs to enter into the central channel, into the heart chakra, and so forth, that subtlemost mind to go. So the merging of the sun clear light and mother clear light is what the yogis and yoginis try to do. They, having generated the sun clear light, or whatever you want to call it, siblings sun clear light, during this lifetime, then during the evolution that's karmically caused at the time of death, they're able to follow that and merge their understanding of emptiness, which they've cultivated in the sun clear light, with the mother clear light. The meeting of the mother and son, maybe. Coming back to mom. Okay? Okay. Done.
This is a little bit similar to the discussion on the clear light of death. During a meditation, somewhere I think around the definition is possible. And you no longer have any control. Any control at all.
After what? What happens? What's happening at that time?
I'm studying the third year. Gross consciousness.
Starting to absorb your gross consciousness, you no longer have control? What did I say? Which control was I talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but what?
It's about, or was about stage 5, I thought.
Okay. Well,
Whichever stage it was. And it brings up the question similar to dream neighbor. If you've lost all that control, how can you meditate on the clear light at this stage of death? Is that habituation you've done?
does anyone know? So, say for instance, when the 80 indicative conceptions are absorbed, that's just about where we finished last time, right? Or we got a little beyond that? When the 80 indicative conceptions are absorbed, and the white appearance, the red increase, and the black near attainment dawn in succession, due to this changing of the body, the air is entering, getting closer to the heart chakra, and then the clear light. How can you meditate on emptiness? Or how, if do you have to have conception to meditate on emptiness? I mean, you might say, well, I do because I don't have a direct realization of emptiness. But even that, what I think the thing that you try to do is to utilize the factor of mindfulness. So, for instance, in our simulation now, or if you're doing a tantric practice of Highest Yoga Tantra, because in the lower tantras it's not really part of the lower tantras to meditate on the death evolution like this. It might be grafted on by some lamas, but you wouldn't find usually in a Kriya Tantra sadhana or charya or yoga tantra sadhana, there's no mention or need of meditating on the death evolution. Whereas in Highest Yoga Tantra, many of the lamas say that the necessary factor in any Highest Yoga Tantra sadhana practice is to have meditated on taking the three bodies into the path. So we can talk about the three basic bodies. That means transforming death, intermediate state, and rebirth into the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So we talk about, remember we were talking about basic body. Death is kind of like the basic body that's going to be transformed into Dharmakaya. So if you think about that, there you go. So if you were transforming death into Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya meditation would only take place at the moment the consciousness left the body. But the moment when you're meditating, transforming death, the basic body of death is that whole period of clear light that you're transforming and trying to recognize as the Dharmakaya. So from the tantric point of view, death is that period of clear light. Does that give some kind of help in kind of rationalizing why we do that? Okay. Now it's your chance to ask a question. I asked you a question, now you can ask a question.
Well, along the same line, Venerable George, what about someone like Geshe Lama Khanchok, who, as I recall, he was in deep meditation in the clear light, and yet at some point, after some days, his body began to disintegrate, and so someone said, "Well, Lama, it's time to leave your body now," and then he left his body.
Well, I don't know if that, I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened. Generally, the body will not begin to disintegrate or to decompose, I guess the word we use, until the subtlemost mind leaves the body. Even if the body, if a meditator were to remain for many days, even in the heat and humid, we're generally, like say, if, sometimes you've seen a dead animal on the path somewhere, and the next, you see it's just died recently, and then the next day you come and there's a really strong odor of decomposition. So the mind has left the body, and that body begins to decompose. But while the subtlemost mind is there, the body's not going to begin to disintegrate or decompose. I'm not sure what anecdote you heard, so we can go over that later. But in general, it's not up to the disciples to tell the Lama, okay, it's time to go, or something like that. I mean, there might be sometimes when for the benefit of sentient beings, they might say, oh, Lama, please, leave the body or something like that. Generally, it's not good to disturb a meditator's meditation on emptiness in general, let alone the meditation on clear light of death. One of our teachers, Gomotuku, who was in his last incarnation, was in Italy for some time. I lived in the same house with him for some time, and one of the translators came in and when Rinpoche was meditating on emptiness, or it looked like he was sleeping to this, because he didn't know the translator, and the translator said, hello, tried to get his attention, and the Lama scolded him for the longest time and said, the karma of disturbing someone who's meditating on emptiness is enormous, negative karma, because the benefit of meditating, especially if they've got some realization, especially the clear light. So it's not something you'd want to disturb a meditator, either by physically jostling them or by suggesting, okay, we got to clean up the room, time to go, something like that. Probably it's not the best thing to do. I'm joking anyway. Okay, so let's continue a little bit. What do you think? Death, definition of death, interesting, huh? Okay, so as we talked about the dissolution of the 80 indicative conceptions. Okay, so the conceptions which are indicative of the white appearance, they absorb at the time of the white appearance, right, Venerable? Someone? And the conceptions that are indicative of the red increase, they absorb at the time of the appearance of the red increase or the end of the red increase? Who's at the end?
According to Lamas and Kappa, they all dissolve during fifth dissolution.
They absorb.
Absorb.
Yeah, but the fifth, rather than saying fifth, which time is what time is that? Rather than saying the fifth, is that when the earth element absorbs, the fire element, when do the 80 indicative, before the white appearance, at the red appearance, rather than calling number fifth, because someone else may number them differently, what's taking place, what has just taken place before that, and what is just going to take place after that, when all 80 absorb before the white appearance. Yeah. So all of them have absorbed without any remaining. All of these 80 indicative conceptions have absorbed before the appearance of the white appearance, before the onset of the white appearance, let alone the red increase. So why are they called indicative conceptions? You remember? Leo, did you catch that?
No.
Okay, and that's a good. Not how I'm in school. I didn't get much credit for honest answers when I said I honestly don't know. But anyway, the teacher didn't say, "Oh, bravo!" But anyway, here we'll do that. Jesse, what do you think?
They kind of indicate that you're alive, like your normal consciousness.
Oh boy, is that what they're called indicative conceptions? Dave, do you know? Honestly, you don't know. Does anyone know? Honestly,
I don't know.
okay. Did you?
I was looking at something else.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't quite get it, but I know, it says because they're an imprint or effect of the mind with white appearance, but I still don't understand exactly what that means.
So the way that Jeffrey's translated this, indicative conceptions, Jeffrey Hopkins, maybe I haven't seen many other books that relate to these subjects. I don't know how other people translate it. But the idea is this. There are three sets of these conceptions, 80 conceptions, right? How many are there? 33, 40, and 7 or something like that, right? So the 33 are said to be indicative of the white appearance. That means the white appearance, the red increase, and the black near attainment, here we got sort of like the nada, 3 different segments here, are they of equal strength of mind? Are they some more subtle than the others, or which is more subtle, the white? The black. The black's more subtle than the red. Right, the black is most subtle of those 3, red is middling, and white is the grossest of the 3. So the mounting winds of the white appearance, the mounting wind of the white appearance, because all minds have a mounting wind, a prana that serve as their mount, that's going to have a little more force, a little more strength than that of the red increase, which is going to be slightly subtler. The subtlemost, the black of these 3, the black near attainment's mounting wind is going to be subtlest. So Lama Tsongkhapa explains the Buddha's intention in using that terminology that we can translate into English as indicative conceptions. It's a completely legitimate translation for that. Because the 33 that are associated with the white appearance have slightly stronger action. They move to their object more forcefully than the 40 indicative conceptions associated with the red appearance. They're slightly, not quite as forceful. The 7 associated with the black near attainment, they move to their objects in a much more subtle way, not as forcefully. And so a yogi or yogini who, in recognizing, analyzing again and again through that meditation when these 80 absorbed, notice that some of them had stronger mounting winds than others. That could serve to indicate to them, if they had not yet perceived the white, red, and black appearances, that the white, red, and black appearances had different strength winds that acted as their mounts, because these 80 conceptions, these 80 indicative conceptions, they arise again in the reverse order from the clear light, right? First there's the black near attainment. What comes after the black near attainment in the reverse order? Red increase. Mind is becoming a little grosser, and the mind and the winds that mounts it is a little stronger. Then the white appearance, mounting wind, a little stronger. Then these 80 indicative conceptions, they arise as imprints of these 3 strength mounting winds. So it's said that, as you see the terminology, they tend to indicate to someone who had not yet perceived them. Where's the particular terminology? How's it say? Or let's say the third one, page 41. The 7 conceptions of the third group involve a weak movement of the wind that serve as their mount to the object, right? That's the weakest of the 3. Thus, they serve to indicate, or in other words, to illustrate the same, that is, that they have a weak mounting wind, with regard to the mind of black near attainment. In other words, that the mind of black near attainment has a weak wind that is its mounting wind. They serve to indicate or illustrate the same with regard to the mind of black near attainment for those who have not experienced it. This is because this group of conceptions is an imprint or effect of the mind of black near attainment, when proceeding in reverse order to the grosser states. Okay? Is it starting to get a little clear? We mentioned that. What do you think, David? And they're still not quasi.
Yeah, it's sort of like, can you know? These conceptions indicate these other 3. Okay. I mean, that's sort of how it doesn't, it's sort of like saying that, like a signpost is on the road, you know.
Well, I think one of the things it's saying is that these 80 conceptions arise as imprints of these gross minds after these, or these subtle minds after they've ceased. The black near attainment, the red increase, the white appearance. This is going in reverse order from the clear light. Then the 80 indicative conceptions arise. They can only have arisen from imprints of the minds that came before them. There were 3 successive minds that came before them, and of these 80 indicative conceptions, there are 3 groups. One of the groups have slightly stronger, gross mounting wind, forceful. One of them has intermediate. Some of them has very subtle. And so one can deduce from that, at least the Buddha said it is possible to deduce from that, so it's maybe not intuitively obvious to the most casual observer. I remember this was one of my professors in college, George Whipple Clark. He was teaching physics, and he would at MIT there were these huge boards, probably at a lot of colleges, like 3 banks of blackboards. He would write, it took about 20 minutes to write all these equations, and then at the end he would sort of dust off his senses. Intuitively obvious to the most casual observer. In which case we're all in our place. Anyway, so it may not be intuitively obvious, but if you think about it, this is what Lama Tsongkhapa said is the intention that Buddha's intention in mentioning in the Tantras these what he called the 80 indicative conceptions that were grouped into these three groups. Yes.
I was not here for the last class, and I may have missed this, but what threw me when reading this earlier was when proceeding in reverse order to the grosser states. I'm sure everybody else understands that.
Okay, everyone understands it, right? Who hasn't answered? I can't ask some people who weren't here last time. Dorje. What does that mean? When it was the word? When? what's the terminology? When proceeding. Just read the phrase you were just questioning.
When proceeding in reverse order to the grosser states.
So what is that? Alabama, North Carolina, or does that mean California, New York are the grosser states? Is this some kind of political statement or what?
Red increase versus the blue increase.
Yeah, the red increase, it should be the blue near attainment, black near attainment. So what it means is whenever one enters into the clear light of death, that is never the end, unless you attain Dharmakaya at that point, in which case you might say there's not going to be a merging of gross minds again. But from that state, the clear light of death, there will be an exit from the body, an ending of that clear light of death, and entering into the Bardo state. The way that takes place is a reverse order now from how that clear light of death evolved. First of all, the clear light, there's a slight motion of the wind, the mounting wind, and which in tantric sadhanas one also has some interpretation of, and the mind starts to get faint, like falling into a faint, but then a little bit clarity, like the reverse order of the black near attainment. Usually first you have some mindfulness and then no mindfulness. From the clear light of death, there's, first of all, is a blackness, then a little bit mindfulness, then turning into a red, vast clarity. The red was an increase, and then that becomes a little bit grosser vibration of whiteness as the mind is becoming grosser in the Bardo state. This is going from the clear light of death. This is what's meant by proceeding in reverse order to grosser states, because that clear light of death is the subtlemost state.
Venerable, why do they call that a dissolution? It seems like you should be going through dissolutions, and then you should go from the gross to become grosser when you become reborn.
Okay, so what I will suggest is during the tea break, you dissolve some sugar in the tea, and we'll address that question after the break. Now, there were some very interesting questions that were asked just at the break time, and I thought we should address those and then go on, because some of these questions, I think, really fill in some important things. And, of course, we want to try to get through the material of the course, too, but who was... Frank's had a question.
You were talking about the thing going, excuse my cookie, grosser, some subtler to grosser, but yet they're still describing dissolutions. We're still on the 5th dissolution or the 6th dissolution. Why aren't we waiting until we get done with the dissolutions to start becoming
If something
grosser?
is becoming grosser, it's no longer dissolution, it's evolving.
I understand.
Yeah.
But we're already we're only on like the 5th dissolution, and they're already talking about these things becoming more grosser and grosser.
What's becoming grosser?
The thing we just described, it says, as they go from the subtle to the gross.
Yeah, but that's in the reverse order from the clear light.
So they're describing something that's not yet happening in this dissolution phase. It sounds like they're saying this is happening now in this dissolution
No,
phase.
it's something it's something that one would recognize. Like, for instance, where did these 80 indicative conceptions arise? They arose way back at your birth, let's say, when when the clear light of the Bardo being that entered into this lifetime, when that clear, the Bardo being died and went into its own clear light, and that clear light went in reverse order to black near attainment, red increase, white appearance, 80 indicative conceptions. Those 80 indicative conceptions are the same 80 indicative conceptions we have all this life, and that are absorbing at the time of death. So, in general, they have their mounting winds being of different strength indicate that they arose from that kind of thing. It's not talking about the future one, it's talking about the fact that in general, while we have not yet purified the white, red, and black appearances, have different mounting winds, and that these 80 indicative conceptions, which have different mounting winds, have a relationship with them. They arise as imprints, as I said, from when the mind evolves from that clear light. It's not dissolving at that point. It's going from the clear light, now evolving to the black, near attainment, red, and increase in white appearance. Dave, did you have a question? I can't remember. No. Who else? Mark had a question also.
Yeah. So
this was a good one. This was an argument, Dharma argument during.
no, it was just like back on day one. We were talking, if I remember correctly, you were talking about that impure death, when it's purified, becomes the Dharmakaya.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, right.
Have I got that?
Right.
And what didn't make sense...
What is the purifier of that? Is the completion stage, right?
Right, okay. But if death is a process, I mean, granted there is a death state, but it's a process, and the Dharmakaya is it's a noun, it's a thing. How can and the Bard...
Remember when we talked about this, like, death itself?
Remember when we had that thing, how could death be called the basic body? But the death here is being defined as the clear light of death, which has a similitude, is similar to the Dharmakaya experience, which has no conceptuality, direct realization of emptiness. Now, one of the things that you had mentioned at this point, I think, unless I didn't understand, you were asking also, how can it be that these three states, death, bardo, and rebirth, in purifying them, one attains these three bodies, because the three bodies are attained simultaneously. At the moment of enlightenment, it's not as though first one gets the Dharmakaya, and then one has the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. But in a sense, the attainment of all three kayas, if you call three kayas in this case, are simultaneous. But we say that the Sambhogakaya is an emanation out of the Dharmakaya, and the Nirmanakaya is an emanation of the Sambhogakaya. Because later, when at another point, say in the Pure Land, there's a Sambhogakaya, and the Sambhogakaya recognizes that it doesn't have to conceptualize, spontaneously emanates other Nirmanakayas. They come from the Sambhogakaya. So the Sambhogakaya is sort of the source of them. And the source of the Sambhogakaya is the Dharmakaya itself. So they kind of, although they are attained simultaneously, they do have a kind of ability to emanate from one another like that. If one were to attain enlightenment through this process, it does not mean that first you would attain the Dharmakaya at death, and then you would attain the Sambhogakaya in the bardo, and then you would attain the Nirmanakaya at birth, because you would no longer have birth. You're using these impure states to practice, to transform them in such a way that, let's say, at the time of death, if the meditator attains enlightenment at that time, in the clear light state, that Dharmakaya then emanates simultaneously the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakayas.
No, because
They've been transformed. Because at that point there's no clear light of death.
True, but they didn't happen to be transformed into the Sambhogakaya.
Right, because you
wouldn't be able to do it unless you trained. That's why you have to train in this, in purifying. It's a process that is sequential and cumulative, or let's say, is that the right word? It doesn't take place just the first time you do it. Suddenly you've got the Dharmakaya. You have to practice over some period of time, and you have to also, in the lifetime, to I mean, you can attain enlightenment during meditation during life. You don't have to attain it at that point, at the clear light of death. The meditators in Highest Yoga Tantra, that's usually what's meant. When you attain enlightenment, say in 3 years, 3 months, and 3 half cycles of the moon, you actually, in your meditation, you're causing all of the airs to enter into the central channel. Usually, as Kirti Sanchar Rinpoche said, if you're a person of lower or middling capacities, you might have to use a consort to affect that, or highest meditators might not have to. But it's possible to bring all of the airs into the central channel in such a way that you can have the subtlemost clear light mind activated in such a way that you've practiced, and you've practiced before. You've grafted in this process of the death evolution a remembering consciousness, a mindfulness of the meaning of emptiness. Each of the grosser states, when the earth element absorbs, you meditate on emptiness with that slightly subtle mind. Then when the water element absorbs, you meditate, now the mind is slightly subtler, you meditate on emptiness again. And you make a firm determination, I'm going to, at the time of clear light of death, I'm going to remember that as the meaning of emptiness and other things in Tantra. Then as the fire element absorbs, again there's some vision, and you, at that point when that vision appears as a slightly subtler mind, and at this point you still have conceptual mind, you still have the ability to meditate, or to conceptualize, and you make the determination, at the time of death, I'm going to remember the clear light of death as the meaning of emptiness. And you meditate on emptiness at this point. Then as the air element absorbs, again you meditate like that. Then when the 80 indicative conceptions absorb, you no longer can say to yourself, I'm going to do this. But by the force of your mindfulness and the generation stage meditations that ripen that, when the white appearance arises, there is a remembering consciousness. This is like emptiness. You don't enunciate, this is like emptiness. It's just like now, I don't know, the example. Yeah, maybe Pavlov's bell or whatever, There is a remembering consciousness that you can, and of course, so that subtlemost mind, the subtle clear light mind, is one which can have mindfulness, the mental factor mindfulness, remembering consciousness. So if that remembering consciousness is conceptual, you'll have a conceptual realization of emptiness. What do we call the example clear light? The mind itself is recalling the meaning of emptiness now, but via a mental image. So there's a lot to talk about there as we go along, because there's the big discussion. Isn't that mind non-conceptual? Isn't it non-dual? How can you have a conceptual realization of emptiness with that mind?
You also mentioned something about the sequential nature being turned into something that's simultaneous, the Dharmakayas and but they really aren't sequential, are they? You're meditating on the clear light mind of death and the mind of the intermediate state. Don't these all exist simultaneously? I mean, we have a clear light mind somewhere in
our what we're transforming, the ordinary death, bardo, and rebirth, they are definitely sequential. Yeah, and the states, yeah. They're definitely, like the clear light of death, that doesn't overlap with the bardo. The bardo doesn't begin until that ceases, right? The ceasing of the clear light of death is simultaneous with the arisal of the bardo. The ceasing of the bardo is simultaneous with the arisal of rebirth. So when would the bardo cease? With what mind? When its clear light ceases. It also goes through a dissolution, a dying. In fact, it has a mini death every 7 days if it hasn't found a rebirth. And it goes through that dissolution to the clear light and then re-evolves into the black near attainment, red increase, white, and then it's 80 indicative conceptions. As we'll see here soon, Asanga said that it's possible to effect a change in that Bardo being's rebirth state. Say, for instance, when you first die, you take a Bardo body that is of the aspect, and this is just a prelude because it's exactly in the texture. You take a Bardo body that's in the aspect of the being that you will be born as, whether you'll be a hell being or an animal. You might look like a small dog. So someone with clairvoyance or your lama would know when the Bardo what your karma is. It looks like you're going to be born as a dog. But if you don't find rebirth in those 7 days, and who knows, maybe the lamas are out there pushing you away from various rebirth states, you'll have a mini death in the Bardo after 7 days. That can happen up to 7 times. So that's why they talk about 49 days in the Bardo. It's not continuous. There's a mini death. And when you arise out of that clear light of death into the next state, if karma has been accumulated and dedicated for you, say by your possessions being offered by the Sangha or something, that can affect, according to the Mahayana point of view, that subsequent mini rebirth within the Bardo state. And you, instead of being born as a dog or a poor dog, maybe be born as a rich dog. Then the next time, if you die again, maybe, you know, something better. I don't know, what's better than a dog? Horse? I don't know. Anyway, or maybe as a human. So that's why the various things are, that's definitely better than dog. Okay. And was there one, Tian, did you had one question? What was it? No, just what was asked. Otherwise, we won't spend it. We won't go any further. Was there another question that was asked at the break?
I was about to say, being able to see people that were for third eye, maybe be able to see.
Oh yeah, third eye. So this is a little bit, you know, I don't want to. This is a little bit controversial because a lot of people believe in opening the third eye. One of my dear friends, Dharma friends, was just talking about, oh, I should come to this course because so-and-so is opening the third eye or something like that. From a Buddhist perspective, let's say, from my understanding of Buddhist perspective, from the classical tradition, someone else doesn't open your third eye. There might be some situations when individuals can cause certain psychic appearances to you, but that's not what's called fully opening the third eye. There's really not something called opening the third eye. When you meditate on certain chakras, you yourself can cause some psychic phenomena to appear through your own effort. But for some lama or some, you know, whatever you call, therapist or master, you know, Tai Chi master or something, to open your third eye, that's generally not Buddhist. It's not a Buddhist kind of practice. That's essential. It's like people saying, what was I thinking of before? Oh, that they're going to cause you to remember past lives by giving different kind of massage or breathing meditation. Usually, the memory of past lives is something that the ability to do that is something that has arisen because of the imprints of you developing concentration in previous lives. It's not something simply can be induced by some massage or putting you in a bag with no light and people jumping on you, all these different, or hypnosis or regression. So, you know, to someone who has consciously, you know, it may not even have to be a very high state, has meditated on various chakras, you yourself may be able to perceive auras. There may be the residue of meditating on these things from previous lives, and you're able to, just as a karmic residue, see the auras or see pretas, see beings of the preta realm, or see beings of the Bardo. But that's not something that someone else... You remember the book by Lobsang Rampa? You ever hear of Lobsang Rampa? The opening of the third eye. So he was actually, he claimed to be some Tibetan who was brought to the monastery at a young age, and he was supposed to be recognized as very, you know, talented or something. And so he, at one point there was the operation, he went to his lamas and they opened his third eye, you know, with the scalpel, and he had to have bandages around for a long time. That's completely fanciful. And also other people opening your third eye, although some people, some masters might be able to cause certain, even to a group, certain kinds of appearances to occur. That's not generally called opening the third eye, because that's not something you can do later with control. Okay, I just wanted to...
Buddhism doesn't have a problem with the notion that people can have a third eye open and can perceive clairvoyant things.
Well, they usually don't call that the third eye. I mean, some people may call it the third eye. You mean this aperture, the brow aperture?
Basically, from my understanding,
In some
using it to
deities, there
describe
looks like a third eye.
clairvoyant experiences, the ability to see things that the rest of us can't see.
Definitely, that doesn't have to have anything to do with that particular chakra. So it doesn't have to be called third eye. If you just label all kind of clairvoyant experiences as third eye, okay, that you can call anything anything. Remember, we learned in Loreg, right? You can call it, label anything. You can label the moon the bearer of the rabbit, or whatever you want to call it. So, but there are individuals who do have clairvoyance. Maybe you would say, well, that's a name too. Why not call it third eye? But it's generally not. Buddha didn't use that expression, third eye. So there definitely are people that have experiences like that. Some of them come about because of karma that they've created in past lives through conscious effort, developing concentration, creating the causes. The main cause of clairvoyance, these 5 clairvoyances, through effort, is developing tranquil abiding, shamatha, or with Tibetan we say shine. And on the basis of that, going further into some methods that can be used at that point. I think I told you the story once before. You know Alan Wallace, the teacher Alan Wallace, who used to be called Jampa Kelsang, was a monk for some years. So he was at a teaching he was at, with Geshe Repton in Dharamsala. Geshe-la was teaching Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. And so at one point, Atisha is saying how important it is to develop clairvoyance, even for the bodhisattvas, not even talking about Tantra. And how can you really help sentient beings unless you know what they're thinking, what they need, and so forth. And so Jampa Kelsang said, Geshe-la, can you tell, okay, what's the method to develop clairvoyance? And Geshe-la said, first of all, you have to have tranquil abiding, and then there's some methods that you can use then. And he said, what are those methods? Jampa Kelsang said, Geshe-la said, first you develop tranquil abiding, then I'll tell you. So he's actually spent a lot of time trying to develop tranquil abiding for other reasons also, because it's usually the tradition, in the Gelugpa tradition, it said to really develop, some traditions, some of the monastic textbooks say to really develop spontaneous bodhicitta, you need to have single-pointed concentration. You need to have tranquil abiding. So that's maybe a very noble motivation to try to develop also, and to have the clairvoyance to help others. Okay, so let's continue on a little bit further. I think this is really interesting, pulling a lot of things together for all of us. So we had just reiterated about the 80 indicative conceptions, and I'm just going to go over now what's called the Sixth Dissolution. So again, remember, if you just say I don't know, the number may not be so evocative. What's really meant by the Sixth Dissolution? After these, let's go back. The 80 indicative conceptions on page 42, as well as the wind that serves as their mount, begins to dissolve into the radiant white appearance. When that happens, an appearance like a burning butter lamp arises. So in other words, that doesn't mean that the white appearance has arisen. That just means it is going to become, when it says dissolves into, it will have a greater ascendancy and power as this air element dissolves, right? As the 80 indicative conceptions dissolve. The sign of the mind of appearance itself, when those 80 indicative conceptions have dissolved into it, is the dawning of extreme clarity and vacuity, as well as of light with a white aspect like a night sky pervaded by moonlight in the autumn when the sky is free from defilements. Okay, remember when these when these 80 indicative conceptions absorb, the reason for the arisal of this is that, as it says, the cause of this appearance, all the winds in the right and left channels above the heart have entered into the central channel through its upper opening. So the right and left channel, the winds in the upper part above the heart, begin to migrate and enter into the central channel at the crown chakra, loosening it more. Why, if the airs enter into the central channel from the side channels, are the nadis loosened? Why are the knots loosened?
The central channels expanding and the side channels would be weakening.
Well, if the central channel is expanding, wouldn't it get tighter? Wouldn't it not get tighter?
Like say you had some rope tied around a hose, and then you try to put water through the hose. Wouldn't that pressure cause it even to be tighter?
I think the hose is dissolving. And the pressure
Well, there's a relationship. The entry of the winds into the central channel are coming from the knots. So as they are depleting, they're entering into the central channel, not only does the central channel expand, they are diminishing in their strength to hold the knot tight. So at that point, as that chakra opens, the white element, that there is an abundance of white element at the crown chakra, like we on the deities we say a white om at the crown that has some relationship to that white element there. The throat chakra has an abundance of red, also the navel chakra, so there's a red ah at the throat and a blue hung at the heart. So the white element begins to descend, and while that's happening, there is this subtle mind that's arising now, subtler than was when one had the appearance of the burning butter lamp, of vacuity, because vacuity in the sense that the 80 indicative conceptions have already absorbed, so there's no other distractions, just like when we try to meditate in our clear light nature of the mind. Here, there's a natural luminosity to it due to that descending of the white element, so it's called the white appearance. You look perplexed. Is that, yeah? Is it? Okay. Through the force of this, the entry of the airs into the central channel, the knot of the channels at the top of the head is loosened, and since the white drop obtained from the father, which has the aspect of the syllable hum upside down. We just finished this last time. What does that mean, the white drop obtained from the father? Did one obtain something from your father and yet they put it in your crown chakra? What did they do? So when we talk about birth, we'll talk about the evolution. First, the heart chakra is created. So it's at that point that there is some primordial substance from the fertilized egg, the white and red elements. Still, not only some white and red kind of energy from the subtle mind, but this white and red drop from the mother and father. Some of that migrates to the crown chakra. So there's a minute amount, like the white and red drop at this indestructible drop at the heart. So there's some of that white element from the father at the heart, but most of it will migrate to the crown. But the other white substance at the crown, there's much other white substance that you create this lifetime at the crown. It's not just the father's white substance. And there's some red substance from the fertilized egg that remains at the heart chakra, but the majority of it will migrate down to the navel chakra. So I think this is what it's talking about. The white, it's not only the father's white substance, but the white drop obtained from the father, and obtained from the father also as the father's energy was the cause of all of the white energy in our body, all of the white bindu, or tigle, which has the aspect of the syllable hum upside down. This has to do with the meditation doesn't mean that I believe in reality that the white drop is shaped like an upside down hum. That's not the meaning of that. Has to do with the meditation one does to try to cause the concentration to be very acute. This syllable, this substance, white substance that has the nature of water, it comes downward, like rain falling, right? When it arrives at the top of the six-circled knot of the right and left channels at the heart, again, this refers to the fact that each of the white, the right and red, right and left nadis, each encircle the heart chakra 3 times. So there's 2, right and left, with 3 knots. So that's what it's talked about, the sixfold or what? 6-circled knot of the right and left channels at the heart. The radiant white appearance arises. Here it says when it arrives. Later when it talks about the red, so I'm not sure if this is consistent with the red. It's talking good until the red reaches the heart. There's when it comes from the navel, until it reaches the heart, there's the red appearance. Here it says when the white reaches the heart, there is the white appearance. So I'm not quite sure of that. Maybe some of you can consult some other texts and see. This is not the case of an appearance of moonlight and so forth shining from outside. So the white, it's not like you can only have the white appearance of this moonlight when it's nighttime or something. It's completely an inner appearance and has nothing to do with the whether the moon is out or anything like that. There are some relationships with the astrological things. Like, for instance, when the yogis and yoginis enter into clear light, it usually takes place at dawn, at the clear light of dawn. I remember when Kebje Trijang Rinpoche entered into the clear light, it was at that point also. Many of the lamas like that. Also, I noticed my friend yesterday, when he passed away, last breath was about 5:20, and that would be consistent with that, because usually the deep sleep is at the last part of the darkness of the night, and it's when that clear light of death would be arising naturally in rhythm with the clear light of dawn. So there are some things like that, but this is not talking about the appearance of moonlight and so forth shining from the outside. This is called appearance, the white appearance. Sometimes it's just called appearance, nangwa, because an appearance like moonlight dawns. It is called empty. The later ones are called what? Great, very empty, what? All empty, great empty, all empty, something like that. So this is just called empty because of being devoid of the 80 conceptions as well as the wind that serves as their mount. Here it says their mount. Okay. Okay, so that's the white appearance. Here, that's in the 5th dissolution, right? The 5th dissolution is the aggregate of consciousness. Okay, so this is after the 4th dissolution. Remember the 4 elements absorbed? And even after the wind element absorbed with the butter lamp, here there's still the appearance of butter lamp, but this is now called the 5th dissolution. Okay. So the 6th dissolution is going to be talking about the red increase. After that, the mind of appearance as well as the wind that serves as its mount dissolves into the mind of increase. What that means is, dissolves as in before, the airs that serve as the mount of this white appearance, they're absorbing into the central channel. They are becoming less efficacious, and the appearance of red increase is going to have an ascendancy. That's what's meant by dissolves into it. It's not a matter of one dissolving into the other. When the mind of increase dawns, that means red increase, because it is called increase, a red or orange appearance, empty and vacuous, but much clearer than before. That means much clearer than the appearance of white appearance. There was a vacuity then, but there was the vibration of the whiteness is a little grosser. Here the subtlety The red appearance is something more subtle, and so there's a greater sense of vacuity. So it's called increase. It shines like an autumn sky, free of defilement and pervaded by sunlight. It doesn't mean as though the sunlight is coming at you. The sense, and again, not the sense of a blue sky with sunlight in it, but if you would imagine just the space when the sun has risen and it's sort of the reddish glow, the space itself, which is otherwise clear, has a certain reddish vibration to it. That's what's being indicated by this. It's not like you see the blue sky. Okay. With respect to its cause, all the winds in the right and left channels below the heart have entered the central channel through its lower opening at the base of the spine or in the sexual organ. So the lower opening depends on how, probably both are taking place. So there's what's called a secret place chakra at the bottom of the level of the bottom of the spine, in front, along the central channel. And then, at least in the male, the anatomy of the female obviously being different, as the central channel continues on to the male organ, there are more chakras at that point. So the airs are entering into those chakras, loosening those chakras. Through the force of this, the knot of the channel wheel of the jewel, in the jewel, that means the sexual organ, and the knot of the channel wheel of the navel gradually loosen. Thereby the red drop that is obtained from mother, which exists in the form of a single vertical line of a short ah. Do you know what that means, Venerable, in Sanskrit? Atun. So in Tibetan, they mean something different. Like in Sanskrit, when you make the letter ah, it has one stroke at the end. Have you ever seen someone with Om tattooed on their wrist or something? If you make it long ah, you add another vertical stroke. It's thick at the top and narrow at the bottom, like pointed. So this is like inverted. Okay? It is like just that short ah that elongates the ah to make it a long ah. Thereby the red drop that is obtained from mother, which exists in the form of a single vertical line of a short ah, in Sanskrit when added to make a long ah, in the middle of the channel wheel at the navel comes upward. It doesn't mean that red drop actually has that shape, I believe. It means that meditators meditate on that shape to be able to enhance their concentration on it. Here it says, until it arrives. Notice before it said, when it arrives, when it talked about the white drop coming. It sounded like the white appearance only appeared when the white drop arrived at the top of the sixth circle knot at the right and left channels. Here it says, until it arrives below the sixth circled knot at the right and left channels at the heart, a red or orange appearance arises. Thus, this is not a case of the illumination of sunlight and so forth shining from outside. It is called increase, or increase of appearance, red, because of being very vivid like sunlight. So the vividness of the appearance of space, of the vacuity, is greater than for the white appearance. It is called very empty. First one was called empty. This is extremely empty, or very empty, because of being devoid of the mind of appearance, as well as the mind of the wind that serves as its mount. So in other words, it's not only was it empty of what the white appearance was empty of, the 80 indicative conceptions and so forth, but it's also empty of that mind and its mounting wind. Clear so far? Jesse? Mm-hmm. So now the seventh dissolution, if we count in this way. After that, the mind of increase together with the wind that serves as its mount. This means the red increase now is going to diminish in its intensity. It dissolves into the mind of near attainment, so that's going to dawn. During the first part, there dawns a vacuous black appearance like an autumn sky free of defilement and pervaded by the thick darkness of the beginning of night. So if you've ever been out at night, when the sunlight is diminishing, first of all, it starts to get what called twilight. Not talking about the sky now, just like what you're seeing in space. Your ability to see things further on starts to get hazy. You might be able to still notice someone's shape or a fence or a house, but then as it gets darker, you can't distinguish anything. So that's kind of the sense of the progression of the black near attainment. First, there was the red appearance. That starts to get darker, 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 and it is pervaded by a thick darkness of the beginning of night. Beginning of night in the sense that there's still some sense of the ability to see something. The upper and lower winds inside the central channel, remember the white drop has come down, the red drop has come up, and the winds are now in the central channel. Some of them below the heart chakra, some of the winds above the heart chakra. The upper and lower winds inside the central channel have gathered within that channel at the heart. This is due to karma now, at death. And through the force of this, the six-circled knot of the right and left channels at the heart is loosened. Thereupon, the white drop that is above, this is talking about that is dropped down from the crown chakra, descends, continues to descend into the heart chakra. The red drop that is below ascends into the heart chakra. These enter into the middle of the white and red indestructible drops that exist in the manner of a closed case in the center of the central channel at the heart. These are the remnants of the elements of the father and mother also at the time of conception. We'll see when we talk about birth. Due to their meeting, the radiant appearance of near attainment arises. This is talk about black near attainment. That is, in a sense, it's almost as though the encapsulation of the mind now, the winds coming together at that point, it's almost as though things are, there's a darkness because of the encapsulation of these elements. But it's also due to the winds absorbing into there and the minds absorbing. Due to their meeting, that is the white and red drops that are coming up, meeting with the white and red drops that are at the heart chakra, the radiant appearance of near attainment arises. Thus, it is not a case of an appearance of darkness and so forth coming from the outside. Clear, right? It's okay. It is called near attainment, nertop in Tibetan, I think, because of being near or clear, near the clear light. So why is it called near attainment? Because it's what's coming next is the clear light of death. So this black appearance is called near attainment. It's near, close to the attainment of the clear light. And it is called the great empty. What did we have? Empty was a white appearance, very empty, great empty. What could be better than great empty? Next one will be called, the clear light is called all empty, right? It's good to know. Empty, very empty, great empty, all empty. It is called great empty because of being devoid of the mind of increase, of red increase, as well as the wind that serves as its mount. And of course, it's empty of the mind of white appearance and its mount, and it's empty of the 80 indicative conception. So it's great empty. The first part of the mind of near attainment, the mind of near attainment, black appearance, has two parts. The first part, you're still conscious. There's some mindfulness, and you would meditate. The meditator would meditate, again, on emptiness with that subtle black appearance. Then that mind becomes unmindful. It's as though one is become unconscious. It's become totally dark. The mind becomes totally dark. And the meditators try to prolong that as much as possible because it provides a very vivid contrast with the clear light that comes afterwards. The longer they can remain in that black appearance, the more they're able to ascertain the clear light, it's said. So the first part of the mind of near attainment, when there's mindfulness, is accompanied by a sense of an object, that is the blackness. But during the latter part, when there's no mindfulness, one is not mindful of any object, as if swooning unconsciously, swooning. I think my mother used to talk, swooning. It sounds like falling in love or something, isn't it? What does swooning mean? It means kind of like, it wasn't that like in Gone with the Wind, sort of like the ladies would swoon. Swooning unconsciously, confounded in darkness. Did you swoon? Then all the winds and minds that adventitiously rise from the very subtle wind and mind cease. Okay, like in grade school. Now you have to explain that sentence because you were fooling around. So you have to explain the sentence. Then all the winds and minds that adventitiously arise from the very subtle wind and mind cease. What does that mean? What does the word adventitious mean? Lisa, do you know? To take advantage. It's adventitious. It's something you can take advantage of. I don't think so. Miriam, are you a scholar? Do you know what adventitious means? It's something you can take advantage of. No, you're okay. I don't think that's right. Here's adventitious, not advantageous. That's the word. There's some relationship, but in the prefixes, but not. Something which is adventitious is something which is not always there, but comes about temporarily due to certain causes and conditions. Like the clouds are adventitious. They're not always there, even though if in certain places, and here in Soquel in the winter, it seems like this clouds are permanent. Right? They're adventitious. They only arise temporarily due to causes and conditions. So the adventitious defilements, what does that mean? The defilements or the afflictions are said to be adventitious because they're not constantly part of our mind forever. It's not as though, forget it, I can't work with anger. That's just me. I'm an angry person. Anger is an adventitious, all of the afflictions are adventitious. They arise due to combination of imprints in the mind, which can be removed, meeting an object, thinking about it inappropriately, and then that anger, let's say, or attachment or any other affliction can rise. So here, all of the gross minds that we have in this lifetime are adventitious. Why are they called adventitious? Because they're temporary during this lifetime. At the time of death, even at the time of sleep, they absorb, the gross minds and their mounts, the winds, absorb to the heart, and the gross minds are not manifest at that time. At the time of sleep or other meditation, when they absorb, although they're adventitious, they re-emerge out of that with the memory of what happened. When you go to sleep at night, you wake up the next morning, you remember what happened yesterday, don't you? Unless you're one of those movies where you have amnesia or something like that. Okay, well, that'd be interesting to see if there's some relationship with that and amnesia and the absorbing of the winds and so forth. So then, this is the end of the black near attainment. Then all the winds and minds, because each of the minds, the gross minds that we had, the minds that were slightly subtler as the elements dissolved, the minds of white appearance, red increase, black near attainment, all of these minds and their winds that mount them, that act as the vehicle for moving them, that adventitiously arise from the very subtle wind and mind, you could say that as a parenthetic phrase, they cease. All these winds and minds cease. Which winds and minds? That adventitiously arise from the very subtle wind and mind. So this is very useful to know in Tantra, because in Tantra there's some, consequences of this, as though from the very subtle, most clear light mind, everything else arises. Everything arises out of the clear light, adventitiously. And at a later time, everything evolves back. So in some meditations, out of the clear light, you arise as the deity. And at the end of the meditation, the deity, the mandala, everything dissolves back into the clear light. So this is kind of the meaning of adventitious. All of the conventional appearances also are said to be adventitious like this. They arise because of causes and conditions from the clear light. The latter portion of the mind of near attainment, without mindfulness, continues until the mindfulness of the very subtle wind and mind, which has existed in an unmanifest form from the beginning, that means from all eternity, in the ordinary state, is activated. When that occurs, the clear light of death dawns. Notice this is the clear light of death. So that clear light is the actual death. Remember the question we were having at the beginning. So if that question was on the final exam, would you be able to answer? What is the according to our text, Highest Yoga Tantra in general, what's the definition of death? Would you be able to answer, April? Venerable? Okay. I won't ask you what the answer is, but you're so sure that you can answer. So this last part, when the mind is as though unconscious, the black near attainment, this continues until there is a mindfulness of, that's the word that's used here, the very subtle wind and mind which has existed non-manifestly from the beginning in the ordinary state is activated. What is being activated? The mindfulness or the mind? I have some doubt about this because I'm not sure. In general, clear light of death is not necessarily one that the person is going to be able to recall later. That recollection or that the acuity of that mind depends on how much you're paying attention to it, what we call the factor of ascertainment that's actually ascertaining it. Remember when we talk about inattentive perception? The mind might be inattentive. For most of us, the clear light of death is inattentive. But if it's inattentive, could there still be mindfulness? Is there any contradiction? Here it says it uses the word mindfulness. The latter portion of the mind of near attainment, without mindfulness, continues until the mindfulness of the very subtle wind and mind, which has existed from the beginning in the ordinary state, is activated. Sounds like until the mindfulness is activated. Well, there's a difference. That black near attainment is one where there was no mindfulness of any object. It was as though you were swooning. Now, there is a conscious state. Remember, Diane, you were asking, was it conscious or unconscious? This is a conscious state. So there is the mental factor mindfulness is there. It's not like the black near attainment where one swooned. But this doesn't necessarily mean that one is aware of this. For many people, that can just take place and one is not paying attention to the clear light. But it is a conscious phenomenon. How could something be conscious and not be paid attention to? I gave the example. I don't know if you would agree with this, David. I gave the example to Jan. When David's watching the football game on Sunday, do you ever do that? Okay, that's not good. Okay, when you're watching the ballet, no? PBS, Star Trek. Okay, when David's watching Star Trek, one of the great episodes, and Diane says, "David, come, the spaghetti's ready," and David's just. The ear consciousness is conscious of the sound, but because your mental consciousness is paying attention to, in this case, paying attention to something else, Dr. Kirk, or who was it? Captain Kirk, Dr. Strangelove, or whoever. And at that point, because the mental consciousness is paying attention to that, it is not pay attention to what the ear consciousness is conscious of. So it is possible to be conscious, but not to ascertain that. That's what we call inattentive perception. It's actually in low rig, in the subject of low rig, it's called a consciousness to which an object appears but is not ascertained. That object is not ascertained. That is, it's not able subsequently, if Dhyana says, didn't you hear what I said? You say, well, yeah. Or, maybe you make up, you'll say, but you can't recall having heard the spaghetti was ready because you were, maybe some part of your mind paid attention to it, but you ignored it. That's a different story. Excuse me. Pay attention. But, I'm joking. But that's not inattentive perception. That's just ignoring. But there are cases when you pay so much attention to something that you are inattentive to something else. Okay, so now we have the definitions. We said, Dorji, are you attentive? Do we have any time left?
7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay. The definition of a mind of radiant white appearance. So this means the white appearance. Here's the definition. A mental consciousness, notice the mental consciousness, which occurs upon the dissolution of the conceptions, that means the 80 indicative conceptions and all the others, until their movement, that is, until their reinstatement. That's not the only part, to which the appearance of radiant white vacuity dawns, which is like an autumn sky free of defilement and pervaded by moonlight, and to which no other coarse dualistic appearances appears. No other gross dualistic appearance appears. There's nothing else, no other gross dualistic appearance. Could you meditate on Shakyamuni Buddha at that point? The appearance of Shakyamuni, could you meditate on that? Doesn't sound like it, right? Could you meditate on emptiness? If you can't meditate on Shakyamuni, how could you meditate on emptiness? Well, that doesn't have a gross dualistic appearance, emptiness. So this vacuity, although there's a little bit of white vibration in it, has the same kind of sense of the appearance of emptiness that you have hopefully familiarized yourself with in the gross state, with a gross mind, and you've meditated on through the various stages of the dissolution. So you can recognize this as having the sense of emptiness, recalling emptiness. Even that white appearance will not be what your mind is ascertaining. You can actually use that mind of white appearance, the subjective mind, to meditate on emptiness. So the emptiness is not going to be white at that time. But unless you can recall the meaning of emptiness and meditate in that way, there will just be the appearance of white appearance. Does that make sense? Until their movement, that is their reinstatement. That means, say for instance, when we're doing some sadhanas, it says, say for instance, you meditate on the clear light, or you meditate on emptiness, and then just over some time, because of the karma diminishing, or your samadhi diminishing, there's a movement of the winds, and then you might appear out of that clear light as the Sambhogakaya. That's the point that you would use. Here it's talking about the movement is just meaning until these 80 indicative conceptions arise again later. Okay, let's end there. The definitions of the red increase and black near attainment are quite similar. And take a look at this. The 8th dissolution, when the mind of near attainment dissolves in the clear light, the second portion of the mind near attainment. Did we just do that? Yeah. So we'll talk about the clear light next time and hopefully go on to the bardo state, the intermediate state. I think it's quite good questions. I don't know, maybe some things getting cleared up. What do you think? Maybe not. Okay. You're all bored out of your mind. So let's try to dedicate the merit. So first see if you can, through the force of familiarity, recall the peaceful, non-conceptual state that we had tried to engender from watching our breathing, meditating on the clear light nature of the mind, just to have a non-conceptual state to start out with. And then within that, to recognize we've created virtue, conventionally, that will have some effect within cyclic existence. We've probably created contaminated virtue through good motivation, meditating and thinking about these subjects. Dedicate that merit, like in the prayer Jangchub Samcho Grimpoche. Due to these merits, may the bodhicitta which has not yet arisen in my own continuum and in the continua of others, due to this merit, may it give rise to that bodhicitta. You can even think in a more extensive way, both the conventional and the ultimate bodhicitta, although usually there's a separate prayer for ultimate bodhicitta. And as a result of this merit, may the bodhicitta which has arisen, even to some extent, may it not decline, may it never degenerate, but instead may it continue to increase. So may the bodhicitta, due to this merit, bodhicitta in my own mind and other people's minds, increase that which has never been there before, sort of extending to places where the bodhicitta has not been. And where it has started to take root, may it continue to grow and not decline due to this merit. And seal the dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres, merits, the act, the goals dedicated to, and the act of dedication. All empty of true existence. The dedicator